Hello again. So thank you to all of you who have been here with us throughout the day, and welcome to those of you that are just joining us for this final program of the day. I will introduce the introducer. So Clay Odom will introduce the keynote speaker.
Thanks for that glowing introduction, Igor. Climate change is forcing us to rethink design radically, to shift our focus away from a purely visual and functional approach towards one that is more sensitive, more attentive to the invisible, climate-related aspects of space. Might not climate be a new design language, one rethought with meteorology in mind? Those are the words of our keynote speaker tonight, Philippe Rahm. They can be seen as a call to action, speculatively reframing design for our era. With today's gathering broadly engaging interiors and interior design in the context of weather and environment in the Anthropocene, Philippe's work as a practitioner, curator, and scholar is an ideal fit. It expands both the responsibility and territory of our thinking and actions as interior designers. Philippe Rahm is a Swiss architect with a degree from the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne and a doctorate from the Université de Paris-Saclay, pardon me, whose eponymous practice of Philippe Rahm architects is based in Paris. From physiological to the meteorological, the work has reached an international audience and has broadly influenced practice in academia and helped shape new conversations, theories, and methods for design action. He has authored several books, including most recently The Anthropocene Style, and has taught at Harvard, Princeton, Columbia Universities, HEAD, Geneva, and ENSA, Versailles. He has taken part in numerous biennials, including those in Venice, Tbilisi, Madrid, Chicago, and Tallinn. In 2025, he was co-curator of the Ile-de-France Biennial. He is a Knight of the Monaco Order of Cultural Merit and has been awarded the Silver Medal of the French Academy of Architecture. Philippe's work argues for a renewed focus on interior design with his spatial, formal, and material configurations reconceived to optimize climate-regulating performance and human experience. He calls this 21st century functional and decorative aesthetic the Anthropocene style. Central to his practice is the notion of atmosphere as an active, designable field, an invisible yet measurable medium that shapes how bodies inhabit space. In seminal projects such as interior weather and domestic astronomy, Rahm transforms gradients of temperature, humidity, and air movement into the very structure of space, dissolving traditional boundaries between architecture and meteorology. His convective apartments in 2008 further advances this logic, organizing domestic night life, not through enclosure or partition, but through the natural stratification of air. More recent works employing thermal imaging and environmental simulation continue this exploration, visualizing the invisible thermodynamic landscapes that govern interior experience and perception. Most recently, as curator of the Versailles Landscape and Architecture Biennial, Rahm continued to extend his ideas from the body and domestic spaces to urban and territorial scales, extending further, framing landscape as climatic interface and architecture as a tool for atmospheric rebalancing. My colleague Nerea, Felice, and I were proud to have research conducted by students included in this exhibition, which you can see in the north lobby of Goldsmith if you take the time to walk by. From the suppleness of thermodynamic gradient visualized through thermal images, which reveal air spaces imperceptible to the human eye, to the visualization of humidity, temperature, and air, which we can only feel, not see. Philippe's work challenges standard notions of rigidity and closure in favor of space which is allocated and occupied based on human perception and physiology. He said, between the infinitely small scale of the physiological and the infinitely vast scale of the meteorological, architecture, and by extension interiors, must build sensual exchanges between body and space to invent new approaches capable of making long-term changes to the form and way we inhabit and will inhabit buildings tomorrow. His approach offers a new ethical and aesthetic framework for practice in the age of climate change, treating design as a medium of environmental modulation and metabolic exchange. Through his work, Philippe has profoundly reshaped how we visualize, model, and conceive of interior space in an expanded, yet deeply and specifically disciplinary way, shifting attention from form and structure to energy, comfort, and the reciprocal exchanges between bodies, materials, and atmospheres. Please join me in welcoming Philippe Rahm to the stage. Thank you.
So thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here, and I will go very fast in a lot of projects. So I'm beginning immediately. Hop. So it's okay. No, it doesn't work. Okay, so it's like going to the past. Like I first opened an office in Switzerland called Decoster and Rahm Associés, and until 2005, and we represent Switzerland at the Venice Biennale in 2002 with this book, Physiological Architecture. And at that moment, it was very important for me to explore a little like the core of architecture, because everybody was talking about the wall, the image of a wall, but in reality, the target of architecture is the void itself, it's space, and so how to define space by the physicality of the space. So a first project we made in 2002 was for an artist, Fabrice Hibert, in France. And in reality, here we were thinking that, you know, in Paris, you are creating, like during the winter, when you have a radiator, you are creating 20 degrees Celsius, so it's warm and it can be very cold outside. And then during the summer, you want to produce a more temperate climate when it's hot outside. And in reality, it was like recreating in real time the climate of Tahiti in France. And when you have a radiator, in reality, you are like making a shift of latitude by bringing a climate that is really existing on the planet at the real time, but you are bringing it somewhere it doesn't exist. So we were saying, okay, let's take everything from Tahiti in Paris, in France, it was in La Vendée. And so we introduced that in the center of the house, and it was like producing light, producing heat, and also producing the smell and the plant of there. So it was like the central heating room was like the main core of the house. And so it was like a house in jet lag, because it was producing also the light when it was midnight in France. It was like noon in Tahiti, so you have the light of so it was like a machine turning like that. And then at the end it was very completely opaque, because it was like full of thermal insulation, but everything was inside. And then it was like this kind of jet lag house, you know, like working and creating the smell and the heat of Tahiti in France. Then in 2001, we were invited at the SF MoMA, and here it was also this idea that how we perceive architecture, and we often talk about you know, the visual, but in reality you have some information that going beyond the visual through the brain and through the hormonal perception. And at that moment, we were thinking about light. You know, light is a very common element of architecture. Like at my time, it was talking about Tadao Ando, very beautiful lighting. But the lighting is not only aesthetic; it can be physiologic. And we know that there is this type of relationship with the melatonin and the fact that when you have no light during the night, you are producing a lot of melatonin. But there is this experiment in 1980 by Alfred Lewis that shows that if you turn on the light, it's decrease secretion of melatonin, this hormone inside inside the brain, inside the blood. And then at that moment, we know that if you have high, very bright light, it blocks the melatonin, and it was not the color at that moment was green, but then it became blue. And so we propose to make room without, so it's no more like a social space, like living room or bedroom, but it's like a melatonin room. So it was like, okay, this one was like a exciting room. So you was going inside and it was blocking the melatonin. And then the other one was like emitting, like now we know that it's more like green, it's more like orange, red, you know, and it's very popular today because it's like night shift on your iPhone, you know, it's blocked the blue light and it's, but at that moment we didn't know exactly what was wavelengths, you know, I was part of a symposium in Eindhoven when some researchers show the blue and the orange light. It was in 2005, something like that. And so it was an interesting moment at that moment. Then in 2002, we have represent Switzerland in the Swiss pavilion. And it was the hormonarium. So it was like, okay, let's work really on the space, on the interior space, without talking about the limit of the space, but really on the matter of the space. And the space is not empty. It's composed by gases, by electromagnetic waves. And let's design that, because if we are not doing that, it will be the market, you know, that will sell the light, that are deciding for us what type of lamp. So let's take that seriously, and we can think about that. And then we made this hormonarium. So it was like working on two elements, and the perception of that was like not in the visible, but like by hormonal perception from the light was through the melatonin. And so we have a very bright light, and then we decrease also, it's here, we decrease the level of oxygen inside the space by adding nitrogen. And so it was no more like 21% like it is on the sea level of oxygen, but it was only 14%, like 3,000 meters of altitude in the mountain. So, so in reality, it's well like a little like going immediately, you open the door and you jump in the high mountain, and you have this bright light that was coming from the ground because you cannot escape. You know, you are receiving, so it's blocked the light, and you have this lack of oxygen, and so the perception of that was completely hormonal and no more no more semantic or no more aesthetic, you know, and I think it was, you know, just to say that architecture is not only aesthetic, it's also about maybe health and pollution and things like that, and so it was important for us to talk about this type of things. So this is some image of the project. So it was quite incredible inside also, because all the limits disappear and you have this feeling of floating in the space. Then in 2007, so it was a little the opposite. We create this diurnism. So it was like creating a kind of night during the day, because as I say, the night shift program, you know, of iPhone is when you have no more blue light, the melatonin can be secreted by your body. So the yellow light or the red light is no more blocking the melatonin secretion. So it was like creating a kind of fake night, or like inside the day. And so it was the opposite of noctambulism. So it was like deambulism, like living the night during the day. And so this was like this range. You know, the blue light is blocking melatonin, and after 600 nanometer, you have no effect on that. And so we choose these wavelengths, and then we emit that, and it was in that space. And then at the back, we create this kind of black cooling screen that was a little like the night vault, and then we reverse the music of you have the nocturne for the piano of Chopin, but it was invented by John Field, and it's interesting because the invention of the nocturne, this type of piano piece, was invented in the same moment than the street lighting was invented, and at the beginning of the 19th century, and so the nocturne, you can listening to nocturne during the day. It's like an evocation of the night. And so here, by reversing, by creating diurne, so it's like evoking the day during the night, something like that. Then we realized something like that based on melatonin, kind of melatonin cafe in Taiwan. So it's based on so the yellow light is like the night, the blue light is like the day, and so we propose to make a cafe where you can move not inside space but inside time. So it's like time design. So you can go into the night or go into the day or go in something that move with the astronomical cycle, and so at the end it became like that. So you can enter and the different type of room with this different effect on the melatonin. So the yellow one have no effect on melatonin, and the blue light is blocking the melatonin. And then it's like that today. This is from Instagram photo. Yes. Here, this is a project also based on wavelengths. We made that for Artemide. It's a company of lighting in Milan, in Italy. And the target was to create the most economic light with the most healthy lighting. So this is the spectrum of the natural light. This is different spectrum, like incandescent spectrum, halogen spectrum. We can see that, the halogen or the incandescent, a lot of energy was emitted in infrared, so it was not visible. So it was a loss of money and loss of energy. So it's why the fluorescent spectrum was better, and then the halogen was only in the visible range. But depending of the semiconductor, you have a kind of wavelengths, and you can and it's this gallium is producing that. So you have different semiconductors that are producing different type of light, and when you assemble them, it creates a white color or some different type of color. But in reality, the human eyes have different cones that are perceiving different wavelengths, and so here, yes, here we can see. So we have one cone. We have 3 cones in the eyes, and if you are receiving light wavelengths where there is a cone of the human eyes, it's good for the body. But if it is not exactly there, so first it will be invisible, so you are paying money for non-visible light, and also it can be creating some disorder for the vision. So we know that the fluorescent light, for example, was creating some health problem for the people that were living in a kind of interior environment. So we look to exactly the different wavelength of the human eyes, and then we say in the house there is not only human, there is also maybe mouse. So we look where the mouse is perceiving the wavelengths, and then dog. Dog have 2 cones, not 3, so it's a different range than the human one. And then you can have birds, so it's like that. And then if you have plants, the photosynthesis need to receive blue and red. And then finally, this is a range of perception of the different spaces. and we propose to make to choose semiconductors that are aligned to this all the cone of the visible of the different animals. And so this is like that. So then we add all this wavelength together. Then it became like that. So we know that, okay, by emitting in this type of wavelength, it will be the good one for the health and for the vision of each animals, and it will be the most economic because you are not emitting where nobody see light. And then we find the semiconductors that was linked to this wavelengths. And then at the end, we proposed like, okay, you can have like light for human eyes. So you have three cones, three type of wavelengths. And then for the mouse, for the birds, and then you assemble all together. And then it became like a white light all together. And then you can decide in the house, you have that. If you are only human, you can turn only the wavelengths of the human. If you have a dog, you can turn the dog wavelengths too. And then it became like that. And for the show in Milan, we create like what are the wavelengths for a bird or for a dog, or this is, I think, for dog. This is like the vision of the dog, and it was like another project we made also about wavelengths in Kitakyushu in Japan. It was, the idea of ghost and saying maybe, if we want to make 60 square meter apartment, but inside 20 square meter, we can do rooms, not different room, not in different space, but in different wavelengths. So we propose to have the bathroom in ultraviolet, the bedroom close to the blue, and the living room inside the red. So then you turn, so it was like that. So when you turn the red, you only see the living room, like that. And then the black line, one line is a bathroom and the other one is a bedroom. So when you are turning the other color, then you see the bedroom. And when you turn the other color, then appear the bathroom. So everything was like, the idea of ghost in the 19th century was like there is different parallel dimensions, so but on the same space. So it was a little like that, and then all together it's like that. And then the book was also, you can read a different story with that. A project we made also on light was this winter beach. We proposed to rebuild a kind of beach during the winter, but by using only it was, at that moment I was reading a little the 19th century, like Huysmans or Baudelaire or Jean Lorrain, so this kind of literature. And the idea was the idea of synthesis, like to decompose the world in, it was coming from the chemistry, to decompose the reality in element and then to recompose. And Baudelaire was saying that poetry is like that, decomposing the world and recomposing by choosing some element but not all. And so it was like this idea of synthesis. And then here the idea of making a beach was to make a beach only with two elements, like ultraviolet, like you have when you go to the beach, and iodine. That was also a very important element in the 19th century. It was the reason of why the people start to go on the beach in the 19th century, why we built all the Brighton or Deauville, all this city was like to get iodine at that period. So we proposed to make horizon of ultraviolet with a cloud of iodine, And then it was a very big space. It was like a submarine house, very big, very large. And then, so it was like that, with this kind of, so it was only ultraviolet and like that. Now, after that, in 2005, I start to open my office in Paris. And maybe one first project that was this kind of creating a connection between the physiology and maybe more the sustainability was interior weather. I was invited in Montreal, the CCA. And here it was a connection to reverse a little the idea of climate and program and function, to say maybe, you know, it's not to design a function and then to ask to the engineer to play the climate, but maybe we can design the climate first and see what type of program can follow the climate. And in the history, for example, the philosopher Peter Sloterdijk talked about thermosocialism, and saying that the fire was creating politics, because the people were grouping around the fire, and then they start to talk together. So it was not they want to talk and they make a fire. It's more there is first a fire and then the people are coming together, or there is a shadow of a tree and the people are grouping and then they make something. So it was like reversing a little this kind of logic. And here, in reality, it was a very abstract project, but it was creating a movement like the sun, changing the temperature, the humidity, and then we have sensor and the light, and then saying that depending of what type of climate and what type of light and what type of humidity there is, it can generate some different type of function without knowing exactly what it can be. So it's not to say, okay, I will design a bathroom, but I will design some temperature and humidity and light, and let's see what kind of function can come with that. So it was a little like this time of things, creating like, okay, you can sleep here because there is not a lot of light, but it's super hot and very dry. So what type of space it is? Here, this is this book, Climatic Architecture, and maybe this is more close to what I'm doing now. This is the idea that, okay, let's design directly with climate. Maybe we don't need to use geometry or to use metaphor. Let's try to use emissivity for choosing a material, or let's use convection for composing a plan. And I can show some example of that. Effusivity. So effusivity, this is you know, the speed of exchange when you touch an object. So between if you have marble, it's become cold. You feel cold very quickly because it's a high effusivity material. If you touch wool, you feel warm because it's a low effusivity material. And in reality, this is something that was used before air conditioning or before radiator for heating or cooling. For example, all the marble floor in Italy in the church was for cooling, you know, and it's described like that. You can find in some Viollet-le-Duc description or Claude Perrault description. They are talking about this kind of material, not because, or during the 20th century, we think marble is only for showing that you are very rich, so you are choosing marble, but in reality, the marble has this kind of effusivity value, and so for that project, it is a competition we have won in 2017. It was for the center of the Maison de la Radio in Paris. And they want to transform that in a kind of public space, and with a cafe and some other public function. And then we start with the cafe and we say, we ask ourselves where we have to place the cafe. And maybe during the winter you are looking for sun and heat, and during the summer you are looking for shadow and coolness. So we cannot say, okay, the location of the cafe is good to have here, but only to have a kind of gradation. So from that we made a solar analysis of the space, and we can see where it's red. There is a lot of sun, more sun. It's like an average during the year. Where it's blue, it's mostly shadow. And from that, we place, in reality, like a gradation of the cafe from hot area to cold area. And we materialize that. We choose the material to follow this climatic quality. We say, where it's hot, where there is some sunlight, let's place some wool because it will be good for the winter. And where there is no light, let's place marble because it will be good for cooling. And then, then it became the choice between wool, low effusivity material, and high effusivity material. And this is just an image because Viollet-le-Duc is talking about this marble floor here in Italy. And of course, you cannot find marble floor in Switzerland because it's too cold. You find wool, or wood. This is this type of choice. And then, so there is this type of gradation following the line of the light model, and finally we can see that. So this is like the sunny area where you can find wool, and so it would be very comfortable in the winter, or maybe in a cloudy summer day. And then we move to the wood. With a little higher effusivity, and then we arrive to the marble, and then the most high effusivity, like it's le zin. So it's a typical Parisian, like the zin, in the cafe. Another about convection, how to design with convection. So convection, it's like the hot air is moving up, and it's also a way of cooling by by having some air moving around the skin, and so by convection we made a different project. You was talking about domestic astronomy. It's an exhibition we made at the Louisiana Museum, and it was like how to economize energy, because in reality there is something that is not so, the nature sometimes is not so ecological, because the hot air is always moving up, and so during the winter in reality you are always cold because we are down, and the cold is always down, and the heat is always up. So we are not placed in a good way, because if we are cold on the feet, we turn on the radiator, but in reality everything is becoming hotter under the ceiling, but not on the feet. So from that we say, let's work with this idea that in reality the space should not, the function should not be placed on plan, but on section, on the altitude linked to the convective movement of the air. The hot air is there, is up, and the cold air is down. And so depending of the function, for example, if you are naked and you take a shower, there is some recommendation for having a higher temperature in the bathroom than in the bedroom. So we place so we say, okay, let's place a bathtub close to the ceiling, and we can go with a bedroom down to the ground, and then it became like that. So it's just to economize the energy, because we don't naturally we have a loss of heat under the ceiling. So let's go under the ceiling. So it was like like that, and we can see this different altitude with the bed going down and the living room a little lower, like that. And then we made a project for the artist Dominique Gonzalez-Foster for a house. It was based on that. It was because there is some recommendation in Switzerland to say, okay, the corridor can be at 15 degrees Celsius and bathroom at 22 degrees Celsius. So we say there is this range of comfort. So let's place a radiator for producing 15 and another one for 22. And then because the hot air is moving up and it's creating like an atmosphere with different value, with these two radiators that are the polarity of the low part of the comfort and high part of the comfort, 22 and 15, and then it creates movement of air, convective movement, and then we can see some different type of temperature created in the space, and we place the function according to that. So the bathroom in the outer area zone, living room in between, kitchen there, because kitchen we are moving a little, so we don't need to be at 22, and bedroom a little colder. And we place first the object, the furniture, and then we connect that with floor, but the floor have to be with hole, you know, to let the air moving everywhere, like an atmospherical interior. And so it became a little like that with this kind of open yes, and we made another project with that for in Hamburg, where in reality you can move up in more warmer layers and go down in lower. So there is this kind of winter area or summer area. It was like that. And then this apartment, so this is some Swiss recommendation, 22 for the bathroom, 15 for the toilet and the other. And then here we also place, the sinks according to heat. So we can see the bathroom at the top, kitchen down. And then we propose to have the sofa for one person a little higher than the sofa for two person. And then there is also something about humidity. You know, if you have one ventilation, you have to bring the fresh air in the low, where you produce not a lot of vapor, so it's more the bedroom, and then it moves to the kitchen or to the bathroom. So we also place in reality we place the kitchen and the bathroom together, because this is where humidity is produced, and so it's challenging the way of organizing the house. No more in terms of social convention, like saying that you have the night part or private part and public part in the house, but here it's just linked to humidity. You have the humid part and the dry part, and maybe it's reorganizing more to climatic issue, and maybe it can reorganize also as kind of social consequence of that. So it was like that. So it's more dry, more humid, and maybe you see nothing, but I think it's yeah. Okay, and then also based on the convection, we made this competition for a university building in Lausanne. We got the third prize, and we used some convective principle of Palladio. It's really interesting to look back to this project, because when I was student, it was explained in a very esoterical way about perfection of proportion, with a kind of body lying in this square and round. But it was very complicated to understand what it was about, but in reality, Palladio wrote a book, the 4th book of architecture, and he's explaining exactly the reason of the plan. He say, in reality, if there is a south, if the south is here, so the sun is doing like that. So he say, during the winter, you are looking for the sun. So this is like the morning side of a room, because you have the sun here, and then in the afternoon you can go there. But then he say, in the summer you don't want to receive the sun because it's too hot. So let's go here in the morning on the west because there is no sun, and you are on the northwest. And then in the afternoon you go here. So you go to the shadow during the summer, and you go to the sun during the winter. And so it's why this is symmetrical, because the room, you are like a migration between rooms depending of the day, the moment of the day, and depending of. And then he say also that you have to align window, door, window to have cross ventilation. So, and then he place this portico to protect, to have no light in the center. And then he took some inspiration from the Pantheon in Rome. And you have a hall. It was also during the 20th century, the explanation with the hall was also very strange, with some mystical light coming inside. But in reality, it's just like to let removing the hot air, because if you close, it becomes super hot inside. So it's like when you cook, if you have a cup on the pot, it becomes super hot. If you open, the heat is going out, and this is the same. You have a hole to let the hot air going out, and so he made that, and then he introduced the fresh air down in the underground. So there is some other house made at the same period that are introducing the air in some. They call ventiduct, so it's like underground cave, and then the air, so it's cool in the underground, and then you have a hole in the middle of the room, and it creates like a fountain of cold air in the middle. So here we can see here this stone that have some hole, and so the cold air can go out. And then the warm air can escape to the top, and so finally it's a very climatic machine. This house of Palladio with this link to the sun and with this air, and we took inspiration from that for this building. So here we have just ventilation. You can open the window when in spring, and then the hot air is going out, like Palladio, like going out. And we can see here we made the same type of the stone with hole, with a floor where the air. So here we are in a certain way removing the duct of ventilation. We are using the building itself as a duct, and then during the summer, or when it's super hot during the summer, we go down to with geothermal cooling, and we made. We can see here. In reality, the university is built on the lake of Geneva, so 3 meters underground you have the water, and then we propose to make. Hole in the ground, and so during the summer you can open and let the water going inside the building, so at the base of the building, and then you can introduce the new air, the fresh air from the underground, and it became like a water pipe or like a narghile. It's like cooling the air that by evaporation, by thermal inertia, if we want, from the underground, and then by evaporation there, and then the fresh cold air during the heat wave can go in the different rooms. So we can see the section with this kind of internal lake, and the new air arrive from there. Another radiation, it's about, I can show how to design by radiation. So we made something for the Luma Foundation in Arles, and it's about how to place space according to the existing light in order to decrease the consumption of electricity. And here we analyze the incoming of light, and then depending of the type of ground, so it is increasing the light or decreasing. If you have a white floor, so it becomes brighter. If you have a black floor, it becomes darker. So we made a simulation, and we see that here in blue there is mostly shadow in the morning, and then in red there is a little more light, and this is at noon, this is in the afternoon, and then we mix all together, and we find that here there is naturally more light, there is naturally less light, so we can place some different artwork depending of the quantity of light that the artwork can receive in different locations. And we increase that by painting the floor like white where there is already a lot of light, and black where there is no light. And then it became like that, with this variation, this gradation of different gray there. And maybe a last project here, just something like an exhibition we made in Switzerland. It's for increasing the light, and so we made the analysis of in a building where the sunlight is entering the building and where it touches the ground according to the moment of the day. We can see like okay, the different. We see the 3 windows, and this is like in the morning, and then we increase. So it's like creating a carpet that is reflecting the light to increase the quantity of light where the sunlight is touching the ground through the windows, and then it became like that in plan, and then it was like that, so increasing the quantity of light, only following the ray of the light through the window. Okay, I think maybe I don't know if I present something else, or it's okay, or maybe I can just go quickly through conduction, like something about the layers, and how the contemporary facade is made of different layers of thermal insulation, vapor-proof membrane, rain membrane, load-bearing layers, and maybe we can, normally they are all together, but we can split and start to live in between the different layers. So this is some different project we made based on that. And then the project in Taiwan for the climatorium is with these different layers there. And inside this climatorium, we recreate 3 rooms. I can go. One is like reproducing the climate of the mountain in Taiwan. And the other one is reproducing, yes, I can just show this Anthropocene style. So how to choose a material according to climatic value. So when we look to before air conditioning and before radiator, in reality, all these elements have a kind of thermal task. So, for example, the paravent, the screen is against cooling by wind. In French, it means against wind, paravent. And then the curtain was also against the wind inside, the cooling wind inside the house. The carpet is to like low effusivity ground to keep that. The tapestry and maybe the painting was also a kind of thermal insulation. Then the chandelier full of crystal was to increase the small light of the candle. The mirror and also the golden painting was also to increase the quantity of light. So in a lot of decision was through practical idea, and we completely forget that when we start to receive a central heating system with fossil energy and air conditioning, and I think so it's all this, you see the low effusivity carpet where you sit, where you place your feet, and all this kind of protection and things. And of course, after fossil energy arrive, you can remove all this carpet and tapestry because if you are cold, you just turn on the radiator. So in reality, we can, this type of modern style, we think, okay, it's like Le Corbusier is this great idea, but you can also imagine that in reality, Le Corbusier is just following the fossil energy desire. It's not a design, it's not Le Corbusier that is a genius, it's just, okay, with fossil energy, you have the central heating system with radiator, so you don't need any more carpet, so it's just like the consequence. It's more, the designer is more the fossil energy than Le Corbusier or Mies van der Rohe. It's, of course, you remove the carpet because you don't need any more the carpet. And so the idea of the Anthropocene style is to say, okay, this type of things is no more available today because we need to place thermal insulation again. And in reality, the thermal insulation or this kind of vapor barrier or airtight membrane, in reality, is like the tapestry before or the screen before, it's the curtain before. So this is like a new type of tapestry, like that. So we have to imagine that that the decoration is coming back, and we, as a designer, we have to accept this is a new reality of the interior. So let's design with this kind of new beauty coming from this necessity to not use so much energy for warming the building, but so then, okay, by understanding emissivity and then the emissivity, the effusivity, the thermal inertia value, this type of things. This is like that. Okay. I think. Okay. Maybe me. Okay. Let's see what there is after that. Okay, just I will finish with that. So here, the idea of inside and outside, in reality, we can imagine, we can understand like the, when you are doing a roof, in reality, you are creating a kind of interior. And here in Taiwan, it's like a little like here, the sun is really strong because you are close to the equator, so you feel the strongness of the sun, and so what we are proposing here is to cover partially the space, like with 7,000 square meter of photovoltaic panels, so it will produce electricity and reduce the quantity of light down. And so we call that faded exterior. So you can go under, and we are creating like a landscape under with also with some building. And so it's a little like it's exterior, but this afternoon you talk about this in between interior and exterior. So it's a little like that. And then the building also is, we say, okay, here we need a protection against, to protect the material. This is for the, with some machine, and so the people cannot enter, but okay, the air and the light can still enter. And then the building is made like different layers. We can see there is like the physical layers, and then the waterproof layers, and then the thermal insulation layers that are not on the same area. And so it's like that. We can see the different layers, and there is air conditioning only in the red bubble, but not everywhere. And some areas are not protected from the rain. And then it's like that. So it was like, we can see this kind of layering of the space. And we are entering here, and then here you can see the waterproof, and then so it's still there is no air conditioning. It's just protected by the and then we are entering the thermal insulation, and like that here. Okay, so thank you very much.
You want to answer questions?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are there any questions in the audience? It's been a long day.
Hi, thank you so much for this beautiful presentation. And I was sort of thinking about this, and I don't have a super direct question, but since you landed us here at global warming, I'm really curious to just hear you speak a little bit about how you think your work sort of beyond the body, which we in this room are so familiar with, speaking about interior spaces and thresholds and how we move and how we feel, and how you see your work sort of beyond. I love the last project as well, with sort of like the landscape and how things are really start to embed at a much larger scale, and I'd love to hear you talk about that. Thank you.
Yes, so here I have a focus on the interior project, and of course we now in my office we are working a lot about urban scale project, and for example we made a project for the city of Aix-en-Provence because a master plan was designed like 10 years ago. And the mayor, they were thinking that this master plan is absolutely not adapted to the rise of temperature and the problem of that are already there, and so they asked us to redesign it according to that. And so we proposed, for example, because the project was blocking the north wind, like it was in the 19th century, it was like that. The Mistral, the cold wind, was like, okay, you have to block it. But in reality today, we have to let the cold wind going inside for cooling. And then the choice made by the urban designer was to have like stone for the building in the facade, but in reality it's not a good idea because during the day it absorbs all the heat of the day and then it releases during the night. So it creates heat waves with what we call tropical night, because the temperature doesn't decrease during the night because it's by thermal inertia it's released during the night. So we propose to have no thermal inertia outside, but inside, in order to cool the interior, but not to warm the exterior. And then of course things about sun protection and things like that. So this type of scale. So we are doing some project on that type of scale. Yes, and then for the building, maybe if I go very quickly like that. This is a little, yes, this is the Biennale where you was invited this for in Versailles, and it's about the fact that the climate is becoming warmer and warmer, so we have to adapt the building to this new temperature, and we have to think when you build in Paris today, you have to think that you are building in north of Africa and no more in Paris, and so it's why we start to look how it was made before air conditioning for cooling, and for example high ceiling with that let the hot air going out, or yes, this is this type of this is one of your drawing, or by evaporation. You know, you have in Morocco or in India, you have this kind of fountain that are cooling the air. So you can have interior fountain for decreasing the temperature. And so this is this type of things that we have to consider today also in the architectural scale. You know, as an architect, you have to provide space that where you can survive, and maybe the climatic mission of the space is becoming more evident today than during the 20th century.
Hi, thank you for this presentation as well. I had a question. A lot of the projects that you showed earlier that had to do with light and temperature, they were in environments where the interior was controlled. The project that you showed in Taiwan, the cafe, where you said you were kind of designing time, what challenges did you face with all the exterior conditions like light and weather inside of those spaces that were encased in glass?
Yeah, there is something paradoxal when we start to we start our practice. You know, it was a moment where we understand that to make the most ecological building or the most sustainable building, you have to make a perfect thermal insulation and to seal the interior so you can reduce the quantity of energy that you are using, because if the thermal insulation is not so good, you are losing energy, and if it's not an air-proof space, you are losing also heat by the gap you can have. So during the 1990s, the most ecological one was the most sealed one. So the house for Fabrice Hibert was like the most, you know, there is no more window because, you know, the U value, the thermal conductivity value of a window is not so good than a wall, you know. So you are losing a little energy by the window. So in a certain way, if you want to reduce the maximum the energy consumption for heating or cooling a building, you have to be completely separate from the outside. So it's why we start from that. So we start from this kind of very sealed space, and then it's then because of different in Taiwan, for example, it's not you can also make things differently yes, it's why a lot of projects from the beginning are really like box, you know, with a very specific climate inside, separate from the outside.
Maybe one more.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Amazing. I want to ask you a little bit about the importance of representation in your projects, in your practice. I've seen your book in the past, and it's impressive, the amount of diagrams. So could you talk a little bit about that, please?
Yes. You know, when you are drawing a section, you need to place the human scale inside, you know, and so you have, for example, Le Corbusier, 2 meter 26, you know, like that. Or at one moment you have Sejima Sana that was making this black figure, and then you know, we have to decide, okay, what type of human scale we will place, you know, and it's quite challenging because and then we find this thermographic human body, you know, and so to find a way of representing is really challenging, and I think it's also interesting to do that, to reinvent the type of representation code for making your project, and of course red and blue, because red is hot, blue is cold, and then it's corresponding. You know, I'm doing now a publication for a Belgium editor, and it will be like a fashion architecture, little like fashion design, food magazine, but only in thermography, you know, without, so it will be only that like thermographic and like infrastructure. And I think also, I was thinking, okay, is it really still very interesting to show some photography today? Maybe it's more interesting to see thermography than photography. So it's like challenging the representation to say, let's show, let's design by convection and with thermographic scale, human scale, and then at the end we can take photo, but no more photo in the visible, but in the infrared, you know. So it's like challenging each not only architecture and building, but also the representation tools at the beginning of the project and also at the end of the project when you are making publication of the project.
We have time? Yeah. I wanted to ask you a question about really assessment of your work, in the sense that, of course, as we see in these diagrams, your projects are really grounded in scientific insight. And I wonder whether you use your work, the build work, to actually get some feedback. Do you do any kind of sensing and testing to understand how people actually experience those new thermal conditions, and or how our bodies, our physiology is affected by your designs, to be able to then reflect on that and somehow incorporate that into new projects?
Not really. No. We are not really doing that. And in reality, it's based on the we try to base on fact. So, for example, we know that if you receive this type of wavelengths at this type of intensity, okay, it will do like that because the experience are already made before, and so we are following that. So, but it's true. For example, in Taiwan, because it's so we made with the engineer company, we made a calculation for the flow of air, the quantity, the speed of the air, and the temperature of the air, things like that. and then the client asked for proving at the end. So we have to make some tests, and so it was okay. It was following, because the engineer, they calculate the flow of air, the quantity we need that for making the pipe and things like that, and so it was good at the end. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Philippe, for a great lecture, and thanks to everybody for joining us today. It's been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.